If your body feels tight, tired, or still carrying old religious stress, I have a free guided meditation to help you settle. It's gentle, trauma-aware, and helps your nervous system shift out of survival mode. You can get it at innerlightcompanion.com. Welcome to the Inner Light Companion, a space to personalize your spiritual journey with the 12 sacred intimacies. I'm Tamara, your companion and guide. Each episode of this podcast explores a facet of connection with the divine, yourself, others, and the world, offering clear markers to recognize, gentle practices to try, and stories that help you grow what's strong and tend to what needs to grow. Move at your pace and use the name for the holy that fits your heart. This isn't therapy or advice. It's a meeting of souls, a place to listen deeply, ask real questions, and remember the wisdom already within you. I invite you now to take a breath. Let's begin. Welcome in. This is part 9 of a 13-part series of this podcast where I'm talking about the freedoms that get restricted when you're part of a high control religious organization. We'll be doing these freedom restriction focused episodes until the 26th of December. And then December 30th, we'll be back to the sacred intimacies where we'll be talking instead of how to recognize religious trauma and what it does. We'll be talking about how to reestablish your connection with the divine. So thank you for being here. Today, we're talking about the spiritual freedom that most of us in a high control church were told that we had, and the freedom that we actually lived without. Because high control religion tells you you can choose. You're free to follow your conscience, and you have agency. But the truth underneath is always, if you choose differently, you lose belonging. And nowhere is that wound clearer than in the moment the church decides you aren't worthy to enter the temple. When your family is inside celebrating a wedding, someone you love there celebrating a wedding, and you're standing outside because the institution says that you don't qualify. This episode is about that wound, about exclusion masked as righteousness, about the nervous system impact of being told that you can choose as long as you don't actually choose. Let's begin with the temple wedding because this is where the damage is clearest and most denied. When people say it's your choice whether you attend, that's not honest. You're not choosing not to go. You're not allowed in. And for most people, participating in or witnessing the wedding of someone who they adore is a huge milestone in life. And to be excluded from that because you're not allowed, that causes so much heartache and strife when you're standing outside the building while your family gathers inside. And the message landing in your body is, you don't really belong with us. You're not worthy to witness the sacred moments of your own family. Our rituals matter more than our relationship with you. Your nervous system reads that as exile, not metaphorical exile, but actual relational separation, rejection. Your body reacts. Maybe there's a tightening in the chest, your stomach drops. Shame you didn't create. fear because you're disappointing everyone because people are seeing you outside of the temple and not inside. The ache of being othered by your own people. You're not outside of the temple because you lack love. You're outside because they believe that you lack worthiness. That is spiritual rejection. That is attachment rupture. That is belonging used as leverage. The church turns love into a contract, and your family, often unintentionally, enforces it. And then you're asked to smile, to pretend it doesn't hurt, to be supportive, to stay quiet. So their moment looks perfect. Exclusion becomes your responsibility to manage politely. This is one of the deepest emotional injuries that former members carry, even decades later. And I will say that this is one of the things that alienates non-member family members from people that they love. And it's so very hard to understand. And there's not a good explanation for it. For many of us, it wasn't just the temple. It was everyday pressure. Just come to church. Just take the sacrament. Just bear your testimony. Just do this one thing to make your family happy. Every just is a dismissal of your inner truth. It's like this crazy mob mentality that's enforced through pasted on smiles and fear behind the eyes when there's so much pressure and coercion. And here's what your body did. It shut down to protect the relationship. You complied to avoid conflict. You suppressed your discomfort so you wouldn't lose connection. That isn't faith. That isn't obedience. Hear me. It's self-abandonment driven by attachment fear. Your body knows when you're going through the motions to stay safe rather than to stay authentically spiritual. And the more you override your personal no, the more your nervous system learns, my truth is dangerous. Compliance keeps me connected. Freedom of religious practice means this. You no longer have to practice, to participate in rituals that erase you. I recently saw a piece on Facebook. I'm in a couple of post-Mormon Facebook groups, and there was a piece that was beautifully done about the erasure that happens for women inside the temple. So this was posted by someone inside of an ex-Mormon group, and I will happily give her credit. But the title was, What Mormonism Never Told Me. I was raised to believe that the temple was the holiest place on earth, a place of revelation, purity, eternity. But no one prepares you for what actually happens behind those locked doors. The moment you're ushered into the circle, veiled, scripted, and absorbed into a ritual that you were never allowed to question. Today, I want to talk about the true order of prayer and why it's whispered about as too sacred, when in reality, it's the one part of the temple that reveals the system for exactly what it is. What actually happens inside the true order of prayer? At the end of the LDS temple endowment, a small group gathers around an altar. Everyone joins hands in a precise pattern. Women veil their faces. Men take the lead. A designated officiator, always male, speaks the prayer. You don't pray from your heart. You repeat his words. Your voice is filtered through the priesthood. Your access to God is mediated through hierarchy. An entire ritual is borrowed from the 19th century Freemasonry, handshakes, gestures, formation, and all. But no one tells you this while you're standing there trembling under a wedding dress and a borrowed veil. Instead, you're told, this is sacred. This is ancient. Don't ever speak of it. Silence is part of the choreography. This is why this ritual is never talked about outside the temple. On the surface, they tell you it's too sacred, but the real reason runs deeper. First reason, it exposes the Masonic origins. The second reason is that it reveals the actual hierarchy from God to male priesthood to husband to wife to children. Inside the temple, you see the hierarchy fully unmasks. Number 3, it contradicts everything the church claims about equality. Outside, they tell women they are equal partners. Inside, they veil you and tell you to pray through a man, for it relies on secrecy to maintain obedience. If you talk openly, women would start asking questions the church doesn't want to answer. Number 5, it would force the institution to confront its own coercion. Most people walk into this ritual totally unprepared, which was my experience too. That is not holiness. That is lack of informed consent. What the ritual actually means, this is the part no one ever said out loud, but your nervous system felt it every time. The true order of prayer teaches you that you cannot reach God directly. Your voice isn't enough. Your feminine intuition is dangerous. Your body must be covered. Heaven listens only through authorized male authority. It conditions you to confuse obedience with holiness and silence with sanctity. Let's pause for a moment and check in with your body. If you're here, there's a good chance you've carried both spiritual trauma and long-term stress. Your mind has been deconstructing high control religion, but your nervous system is still stuck in survival mode. Tired, wired, inflamed, or numb. That's exactly why I created the Inner Light Longevity Reset, a 12-week trauma-aware journey for women leaving high control faith. We spend the first 4 weeks teaching your body how to feel safe again with simple somatic practices, breath, rest, and nervous system friendly movement. Then we gently name and rewrite the survival scripts that religion wired into your body, like rest is lazy, or I have to perform to be loved. Finally, we design a sustainable, long-term rhythm so your future 80-year-old self has a calm nervous system, steady energy, and a life that actually feels like it's yours. If you're ready to step out of chronic threat and into sacred safety, you can learn more and join the next round at innerlightcompanion.com/longevity-reset to apply for a discovery call. That's innerlightcompanion.com/longevity-reset. It's spiritual obedience training. It teaches you how to submit beautifully. But here is the deeper layer, the one your soul has always known. You were never meant to need a mediator to reach the divine. That's the message I always say. Your connection to God was never supposed to be filtered through a man, an institution, or a veil. That longing to return to source, the ritual didn't create it, it hijacked it. If you ever felt something was off, you were right. Women described feeling numb, dizzy, dissociated, ashamed, disconnected from their bodies, pressured to perform holiness, terrified to break the silence. So this is from Shanti Ray, and Shanti hosts a Substack called The Sovereign Soul Scrolls. So if you're interested in her work, that is a resource that I'd love to share with you. She talks on her Substack about many of the injuries that are caused by LDS membership, Mormon membership, and it's really good work. And I went to her work because she so fluently discusses rituals that cause erasure, particular for women. So now let's talk about choosing your own spiritual path, even though if you're still in deconstruction, the reconstruction is building your own spiritual path. But from the lens of deconstruction, sometimes it can feel like an impossible thing to do, like you don't know what to do first. And that comes from one of the greatest lies in high control religion, because the teaching is, if you leave this, you'll lose your spiritual connection. It's terrifying. But I want you to take a second and think about that. Look at your life now. Your connection didn't disappear. I know mine, it deepened, it purified, it stopped running through gatekeepers. The moment you stepped out of coercive spirituality, your nervous system finally had room to breathe. You learned, often painfully, that direct connection with the divine was always yours, even if you didn't know the path. I know it took me 10 years, but ultimately, the truth was that I came to and could not deny that no bishop was needed, didn't need a recommend, no checklist, no tithing settlement. The freedom to choose your spiritual path isn't rebellion. It's spiritual maturity. And your body knows this path is yours because it feels more expansive, more honest, more peaceful, more rooted, more like home, more personal and intimate. I also want to talk a second about the freedom to raise your children outside the system, because it is really, there's a lot of pressure to raise your children in the covenant. So it's one of the most tender wounds for parents who leave. I know it was a really big wound for my family when I left, but when you leave, the fear that not raising your kids active will cost them something eternally, right? There is so many levels of emotional processing that have to happen as we leave. But you're taught that if you don't raise them in the faith, their salvation is at risk. And the responsibility is on you. It's very interesting because I left the church in 2009. And at the time, my daughter, my developmentally delayed, she's now 31, adult daughter, I think she was 16 when I left the church. So I left the church with an official letter to church headquarters and wanted to do the same thing for my daughter. And the church refused to remove my daughter's name from the rolls, saying that she was a minor and she needed to make that choice on her own. How is that for giving the covert message that not raising her in the faith, they were protecting her salvation from me? That message terrorizes parents. It's spiritual blackmail masked as eternal concern. Remember my friend who brought my daughter to her home and was secretly forcing her to read the Book of Mormon? It's the same thing. But when you leave, you spare your children what you endured, which is conditional love, an obsession with worthiness, obedience based in shame, identity that's driven by fear, dependency on external approval, which is huge in the church and high control churches, and belonging that is always threatened if you're not worthy, according to the group's definition. You didn't abandon your children's spiritual future. You protected it. Your decision to raise your children outside of coercion is an act of spiritual integrity. It's more aligned with divine love than anything the church could demand of you. So finally, what I want to do is talk about what reclaimed spiritual freedom feels like in your body. So freedom, when you're in a high control church, can feel theoretical. It's words. But it's not. Freedom is not theoretical. It's physical. Your body tells you when you're aligned. Your chest opens. Your shoulders loosen. Your breath drops lower in your body, more toward your belly. That can help your nervous system stay regulated. Your decisions feel grounded instead of panicked. And you stop bracing for consequences that never actually arrive. I made the joke earlier in one of my earlier podcast episodes that after I left the church, I went around telling everyone my new name that was given to me in the temple, because I was testing the idea that there was truth to the fact that I would be punished for keeping this thing that I was supposed to keep secret until my grave. And lightning never struck. There are so many things when you leave high control religion that we brace for consequences when we're part of the church, that when you leave, you can see the glass shell that actually is there based on lies and coercion, and testing them and understanding that it was a glass house that was built to control you. When you see that, your nervous system finally can understand, I'm allowed to choose my own relationship with the divine, and I'm safe in that choice. So I want to share a couple of simple ways to anchor this kind of freedom of choice in your body. Start by naming the places where you still feel pressure to conform, because pressure isn't love, it's conditioning. That's where you need to sit down and figure out what you would choose if you could choose freely. Notice guilt and threat. It's training. You've been trained to feel guilty and threatened. That's not morality. Let your body tell you the truth about what feels aligned. Your body, if you listen to it, will never lie to you. Release the rituals that make you disappear, that make you feel small. And let your family's disappointment be theirs, not your responsibility to solve. Instead, rebuild belonging with people who don't require your compliance. It's such a freeing experience to belong with people who allow you to be who you are and make your own choices. Something I never experienced until after I'd left the church. But this is what spiritual sovereignty looks like. The divine never asked you to learn love through ritual. God never required you to betray your conscience. It never punished you with exclusion. That was the church high control, not God. It was people. It was the system. It was control. It was fear. None of those things are God. Your spiritual belonging was never supposed to be conditional. For years, you were told that choosing your own path was selfish or rebellious or dangerous. It wasn't. It was you finally telling the truth. You're not fragile. You're not broken. You are wired, and wiring can change. Freedom begins when you stop letting fear determine your spiritual life and start trusting the inner voice, the voice of your higher self that has been leading you out all along. Thanks for listening. As you step into your day, notice which intimacies stirred for you, and then choose one small practice and let it meet you where you are. You want support? Grab the free Sacred Intimacy snapshot, and when you're ready, the full Sacred Intimacy assessment that can guide your next steps. Links are in the show notes. Until next time, walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the light within.